We're live. Hi everybody, thank you so much for joining us for today's Facebook Live session with Team Shirzai, Dean and Aisha here.
Correct.
I hope you're all doing very well. Today we're talking about a very important topic, mindful living,
Yes.
and how it applies to brain health. So we're kind of shifting from giving you information on the latest science and talk about evidence-based medicine into the application of everything that we've talked about so far.
Yes.
You know, what does it mean and how do you apply it into life, and what does it do to your brain and brain health in general?
Correct. Mindfulness, we think, is the most important thing. It's the revolution of the 21st century. It's the ability to take control of the brain. For up to now, everything we've done, everything that we think about, everything that controls our life is actually habit. It's reflexive behavior. It's actually a low energy state of the brain. That's the natural state of the brain. We think we're thinking. Actually, most of the time we're not. And most of the time we're just going through reflexes. And then we're giving it ownership. We're giving it a sense of accomplishment or whatever you want to call it, but it's the reflex. It's reflex cycle, it's habit. And it's at a basal ganglia or lower level of the brain. And the brain loves this.
So what we basically mean by basal ganglia pathways is that the lower part of the brain, the reflexive part of the brain,
Reptilian.
a reptilian brain is a low energy state. It has a low energy state anatomy. So basically,
Correct.
it needs very little energy to function.
Let me do that again. The reptilian brain, especially with this, it's the part of the brain that doesn't require much thinking. The cortex, the outer brain, that's the thinking brain. Of course, we're simplifying the concept a little here, but that's okay. It's the part that actually requires a lot of energy and requires thinking and intentional action, intentional thought process, and consumes a lot of energy. And that's not the preferred state of the brain. The brain wants to think less. Why? We've said in the previous talks that this little organ, 3 pounds, consumes 25% of the energy of the body as it is. So when you think more, you consume more. So that's not efficient. If you can go through reflex and survive and reproduce and then die, then that's what evolution would have wanted. So in any case, we want to make sure that we don't do that. Why? There's a negative to reflexive living. And the negative is that most of those habits that we've acquired were imposed on us by life.
Yeah.
Life's, and as a child, something happened, you weren't happy, and you associated that with food, and that food gave you the dopamine surge, which that behavior or that want or that lack of the emptiness did not give you, so you became addicted to food, and that became a habit, and so on and so forth. And we got lots of those.
Yeah.
Hers was chocolate, mine was other stuff, more than chocolate, and we all have them. These are reflexive behaviors that are imposed on us. The same thing with other behaviors. I mean, you think about all the habits. Why is keeping healthy so difficult? Why is maintaining your
eating healthy,
or exercising?
All of these elements that we talk about.
It's because we are stuck. We're slaves to those habit pathways that are laid in your basal ganglia and limbic system. Those are parts of the brain. I say that because I'm a neurologist, so it sounds really fancy and sexy and all that. But nonetheless, it is real. So how do we move from the base of the brain, from the core brain, from reptilian brain to the cortex, to the beautiful, wonderful frontal lobe? There's every piece of art that you know came from the frontal lobe and the limbic system, but the frontal lobe had lots of play in that. It did the dance.
Yeah.
The limbic system was the emotion, the drive. The frontal lobe shaped it into the David, into the Mona Lisa, into the Starry Nights. So how do we move there? How do we live there? We live there by actually intentionally living, by mindfully living, by actually accepting that concept and slowly moving with thoughts and behaviors that become habits, positive habits. Because positive habits have a way of actually reinforcing other positive habits. We have a nice PowerPoint that we recently did that actually shows that that process, how it lays down pathways of positive behavior, and those lay other pathways. And if you start this early in life with your children, it has immense effect. But at any age, it has tremendous effect.
Yeah.
So let's move to the frontal lobe. That's a nice real estate.
Absolutely. So as you can see, the word mindfulness or the concept of mindfulness.
I must have lost some people. I got excited.
No, it's great. Excitement is necessary. So mindfulness is not a soft word. It's not a woo-woo concept that, you know, everybody uses. I mean, it has been abused to a certain extent by some people, but in this situation, what we're trying to say is that mindfulness is essentially a life management plan.
It is.
It is something that is applicable in each and every stage of our life, our day, and what it does to your brain is immense and profound. It not only creates positive habits, but those positive habits reinforce each other. So even if you start from a very small place, such as not eating candy and instead eating fruit, that small habit has an amazing effect on all the other areas of life, to something as grand as, I don't know, sleeping well or having better relationship. But it starts with a small step.
And we just had a talk with our cameraman,
Yes.
Alex Sherzai, about not so much that he has anger issues, he doesn't, but any child, any
He's
person
a
does.
loving
We all
kid.
do.
Yes.
Yeah. But you know, the idea of how you manage emotions, and that's part of our plan. Remember this mindfulness about being mindful of emotions, of managing your emotions. That's a critical tool to teach children. How do I manage all this sea of emotion that's building up, and either channel it in a positive way or reflect on it? This thing was not that important. I have other things to do. That's a wonderful life. You know, all these positive affirmations as well as action plan towards a positive way, instead of letting this limbic emotional brain just get out of control and burn the world.
Absolutely.
That's something that we can teach. And I think we had a good conversation with Alex. Yeah. So it's not just about food. We talk a lot about food because we love food. But it's not just about exercise. It's about meditation and calming the mind and focusing the mind and expanding the mind and managing life and managing what you want to do in business and managing what you want to do in the clinical setting and research setting, because it all starts with mindful, intentional habits that you lay down that create incredible returns.
Absolutely. So for those of you who are already logged in, go ahead and type the definition of mindful living. What does mindful living mean for you? How does that apply to your life? And we can all discuss and bring it up.
Yes.
So let's talk about practical stuff. How does this concept increase brain power or brain resilience, or the infinite power of the mind?
Correct. The brain is remarkable. You know, this thing that we only use 10% of the brain, that's false. We use
Not
100%.
true.
No. We use 100% of the brain all the time, but we use it so inefficiently that 10% is actually an overstatement in that sense. And as far as using the software properly.
And I wanted to bring up this statement that she said earlier, and it's so important. Most of us go through our day basically not thinking and being quite unaware or actively being involved in our life. It's almost a reflex. We wake up, we do our routine, and then we go to bed.
Right.
And there are very few times where we stop, we think, we make concrete decisions based on whatever's in front of us, because it's hard. It takes a lot of energy.
Correct. So let's talk about this capacity of this brain. 100 billion neurons, anywhere between 87 to 100 billion neurons. 1 quadrillion connections. 1 times 10 to the 50th processing power at any one time.
Amazing.
No supercomputer in the foreseeable future. Yeah, we'll pass it at some other time. So I'm not one of those who says we will never do this. No, we will overpass. We will have AI that will outthink us. But at this point, this is incredible, powerful machine which we just use in reflexive behavior loops. Even when so how do we bring the creativity? I tell people when I give leadership talks, when a leader hires somebody because of their CV and then tells them, here's my vision, just carry it out, they've just decapitated that amazing machine, because they're basically using their muscle.
Absolutely.
But to bring out the full creative capacity means mindful, proactive, intentional processes. So what do? So we talked about it quite a bit. what does this mean in everyday life? In everyday life, pick a behavior or sector that you value, that is aligned with your vision. We love vision creation. What is your vision of life? So we as a family, we have vision, we have meetings every Sunday where we do visioning and mission and goals and timelines and all that. But vision is very important. What is vision of your life? Well, our vision is to lower suffering in this planet. Not just humans, animals and all that, but lower suffering. Okay, that's a broad, how do you operationalize that? Then you go to mission and break it down. But when it comes to everyday action, then everything is aligned in that direction. If we're doing volunteering, if we're doing work in the clinic, if everything is aligned, and then you create intentional behaviors in that way as well. Not talking about nutrition and everything else, let's talk about interpersonal skills. So what we do usually is we define what are positive interpersonal skills with our patients and where we fail. And we now, oh, wait a second, there's a process. There are activities that you do that you can build that interpersonal, not in a contrived, fake way, but in a real connected way. And you do that behavior, simple behavior. It has to be well-defined, circumscribed, and you do it and repeat it, and then it becomes part of you, becomes inculcated in your fabric, in your DNA. It becomes you. It's not just that behavior, then other things like physical activity. Mm-hmm. And in every action that you take, if it's an intentional, measured, time-bound behavior that you can build on repeatedly, it becomes your personality, it becomes your character, it becomes you. And it becomes a building process of that brain. It actually uses the full potential of this infinite brain without resorting or succumbing to the brickwork that was laid down when you were a child, when you were not satisfied by X, Y, and Z. Yeah. So that process, stepwise, building toward the vision in a measurable way is a conscious, intentional way of using the brain. And then time to meditate. Exactly. Meditation is not just falling asleep. Meditation is not even quiet time. Meditation is not even quieting the brain. Meditation is focusing the brain so that you can go into depths of the mind where you would not have otherwise. Mm-hmm. I mean, how often do you have time to go to 2, 3, 4, 5 layers of thought between the running in the traffic, my gosh, and the work, and then the children, and then some TV thing or news, and you get angry and get into the limbic. How often do we get to really go into the depths of thought?
Not much.
That to me is meditation.
Absolutely.
And mindful living.
Absolutely.
Some of the thoughts.
So basically, what you're saying is that mindful living or mindfulness is taking control of your consciousness.
Correct.
Intentionally. Stopping and managing things. So every action that you take is a clear path towards your ultimate purpose.
Yes, purpose-driven.
So it has to do with your purpose.
Which comes from your vision.
Which comes from your vision and your mission in life.
Correct.
It has to do with your strength.
Correct.
You know, what are the things that you can do at any particular time? Correct. It has to do with your resources.
Correct.
Whether it's time, whether it's family support, or whatever that may be. And it also has to do with your priorities. You know, what is the most important thing I need to do for myself today, this week, this year? So all of that put together, and you have a management plan.
Correct. And it's incredible, the most overused and least understood word then all of a sudden manifests. Motivation.
So motivation is a very vague term, and because we have 2 children, we've talked about this often. And our daughter always used to think that she was not motivated because she used to think that motivation was a thing. It was something that you either have or you do not have.
Correct. But it's not. Motivation, I just throw it to the audience. What is motivation? And very few people can actually tell me what this feeling that I want to do something accomplish. Well, how do you foster that in everybody?
Yeah.
Well, it comes around that repetitive behaviors that lead to success. And then the brain, like the blind spot. The brain has an incredible ability to fill in both the physical blind spot and conceptual and thought blind spots. And the blind spot that's created, that emotional blind spot with these successes, is filled with this emotion of motivation, forward thinking, which we call motivation. But look at that. The most important element of that was creating that repetitive successes that pull you along forward, a lot around your strengths, around your passions, or even just your strengths that create success. Now, the success thing is important. A lot of times we create goals. I'm going to become the business leader. Well, you're not even close. So you better create a step that is achievable, then leads to another step that is achievable to ultimately to a higher vision.
Absolutely.
So the success element, nobody can tell you. You can only tell yourself where you are in that journey and how big of a jump you need to take to reach that success, to reach that success, and to reach that next success. That's motivation.
That's beautiful. So how do we make that pragmatic?
Correct.
And Dean and you and I have talked about this a lot, and we've talked about creating micro successes.
Yes.
And how these micro successes actually lead to habit formation, and not just in a sense of understanding or feeling the success, but we literally create pathways in our brain that stabilize that particular activity, and it makes it a habit. So you basically move away from the reptilian brain. I keep doing this.
Yes.
Reptilian
Now
brain
we're
because you
stuck to
started.
that. Yes.
We move from the reptilian brain into higher cortical functions. So you're creating new and stronger connections in the brain that make that habit or that action easy. Let's take for an example. Can we start with food? Is that okay?
Yeah, absolutely.
I love food, so we'll start about talking about food. Mindfulness when it comes to eating. What does that even mean? So here we go. You identify an activity that you can do very easily, that is available, that is doable. Say, for example, for me, mindfulness was not eating those donuts and the muffins that are on my desk at the nurse's desk station when I go to work. Like today.
Yeah.
That was a step for me. So I literally decided not to go from one path so that I couldn't even see it. I used to take a longer route and go the other way so that I completely avoid it.
And would grab it from the side like this. No, I'm just kidding.
No. Don't have the long arms.
No.
But after a while, I felt good about myself. That was a success. And instead of that, I bought myself an apple, or I took an apple with me, and I ate that apple. That became a small habit. That became a small success. And that initiated that pathway. So I actually started having an aversion to the thought of going and grabbing a donut.
Yeah, and then once you actually, the other side of the coin is, once you make these successes over and over again, the thought of losing that success or the product of that success becomes an impediment for the negative behavior as well.
Absolutely.
So if you're working out, this has been 2 weeks, let's say, and you've been working out, now the thought of just sitting and not doing anything becomes an aversion in itself.
Yes.
Because all that work would be lost. Or if you've eaten well for 2 weeks and then all of a sudden there's something in front of you, sometimes fail, everybody fails, that's okay. But the possibility of failure becomes less likely because of what you've done positively. So just besides the habit pathway that you've laid down in your brain, then there's also an aversion towards the negative behavior as well, and other forms of that negative behavior as well.
And we now have objective evidence to a certain degree that it takes about 6 to 8 weeks for those pathways to be formed.
Exactly.
So you always have to give yourself some time for these habits to sink in. And it relates to food, it relates to exercise, sleeping habits, even relationship, managing your anger and your frustration and not really dumping it on somebody else.
Really? No, I'm just kidding. Okay.
I'm good at that. No. I have good control.
Yes, you do.
But all of these actually make you a very complete person, where you learn how to stop and you think about that action, or you know your patterns very well and you know your behaviors very well, and you find an alternative pathway to address it.
Yeah, it's now the problem with a lot of this thought process that we're laying out here is that sometimes it's not familiar, and we need to kind of bring it to ourselves, for ourselves. So people think, oh, just give me the plan and just do it. Well, it doesn't work like that. The plan needs to be created for you, by you. Each person has their unique patterns. So they have to review their process, they have to review their limitations, they have to review their own resources and goals and create those. And figure out what is the lowest or the lowest lying fruit that you can actually pick first. For Aisha was sugar,
Yes.
For me, it was other things, more than one. And so we have to then focus on our own personal limitations. So we look at this in a different way now. So let's look at exercise. Exercise is not a marathon. It's not a long distance race. It's not winning the next competition. It's getting up in the morning and doing a 15-minute walk. It's in front of your in front of your TV, under your couch, having some dumbbells to do that, to do the buys. Or if laying something on the ground so you can do some sit-ups whenever you can, right in front of you. So it's easy, it's accessible. And a lot of this is what in science we call confounds. We confound one objective with 5 others. For example, I remember when I was working out, people say, go to the gym and just run to the gym. No, I want a limo to come and pick me up and drive me to the gym. Of course, I'm joking, but in a way I'm not, in the sense that don't confuse the issue. My goal is to get to that treadmill and work out. But the fact that I have to dress up and go, run there, you're complicating the issue, which means you'll fail it ultimately. Eliminate all the confounds so you can get to the objectives. And my elderly patients, a lot of times they have joint pains, a lot of times they have balance issues because of neuropathy. Well, eliminate those elements. I said get a recumbent bike where you're sitting, make the seat more comfortable than your couch. Put it in a space right next to your couch so you don't have to go out. You don't even have to dress up. In fact, you don't even have to get dressed at all. And sit on the chair and just slowly go. No balance issue, no joint issue. Not that I've done that. Yeah. But I have had patients who've done that.
True.
But and then just slowly work out to your comfort, but leave a point of achievement. Meaning that the first time you did it for 5 minutes slowly, say next week I'll do 6 minutes at the same rate.
Exactly.
Just small incremental success, and have it somewhere where you can see it. Visible goals are achievable and maintainable. When it's not visible, out of mind, out of sight. It's nothing more true, never more true than this. So it's critical that you actually make it visible goals. We have a whiteboard, well, we have a whiteboard everywhere. 8 foot by 6 foot whiteboard in our living room, but small whiteboard where we have goals that we check off. And that makes it, every time you check off, the gambling people have this, to the art, that pulling of the one-armed bandit, the clicking sound is actually stimulating your dopamine. They know now that if you check a box, that stimulates the dopamine centers, which actually become addictive behavior after a while, which propels you to do more.
Yeah.
So have a visible marker that you can check off your goals for the day. Yeah.
Absolutely. So I think the same principle applies to all the other factors, the neuro plan, nutrition, exercise, sleep, restorative sleep. I missed unwind. Unwind or stress management, especially for stress management.
Yes. Because
for stress, we should be able to have the capacity to identify our stressors, label them, and get rid of them. And keep the ones that are good stresses, the ones that actually challenge us on a regular basis. Optimizing cognitive activity. What are the things that we want to be involved in to grow those connections?
Correct. But this talk actually is even beyond neuro, which is beyond health. Business, work, school, classes, everything can be limited by this or applied to this. That's critical that we do it for all of those elements. So now measurement of these things is critical, and having a system where you can follow it over time is critical. We will have a set of 4 or 5 takeaways from this at the end, at the bottom of this cast vlog.
We'll put it in the comment box.
One of the takeaways is have a vision statement.
Yes.
The second is to make sure that you quantify that vision in a way that's achievable in small increments. Third is it should be a visible, measurable process, meaning whenever you're doing anything towards that process, you can visibly check it off so it keeps you moving forward. Another is don't worry about the word motivation. Create successes and repeated successes around those goals toward your vision. And finally, the most important thing is to realize that all of these things after a while start accumulating into a tsunami of outcomes. That's critical that we realize that.
Absolutely. Beautifully said.
Yeah.
Okay. Some comments and questions. Let's see.
Team Sherzai, you are awesome. I like that comment.
Thank you so much.
I'll take that as
Dr. Yami, we love you back. Thank
Yes.
you. All right. Mr. Alakozai says, I think outside exercise is more effective than gym as it is fresh air. Yeah, we agree with you.
Yeah.
If it's possible, if it's not too cold. We're from California, so it comes really easy for us to say that.
Sometimes we have to run away from fire, sadly, but yes, absolutely, we're in a bad shape right
Recently.
now. But one thing about outside exercise, morning exercise or just morning walk has some tremendous positive effects. We can do a whole show about that.
Yeah.
First of all, your circadian rhythm, what sets your clock, internal clock, your sleep cycles, is determined by light, but especially by morning light. But you add exercise to that, that sets your clock better than anything else. So I tell people, if you have time, forget about if you have time, make time. That was a little dictatorial. Make time. Yeah. Then get up in the morning, 20 minutes, walk outside, brisk walk, come back in.
Yeah.
That's a fabulous tool that affects your health as far as exercise, and it gets your metabolism moving as far as dietary stuff. And most importantly, your sleep cycle is reset by that as one of the elements.
Because of natural light.
Natural light. That's a great behavior that can significantly affect your life. And since it's a brisk walk, meditation and mind management can happen during that time. That's a great thing to right there.
Yeah.
Yes, definitely do that every morning.
Absolutely. I think it's a great idea. Okay, checkboxes work well for kids too in achieving goals. You bet. I think that really makes their successes visible, and it helps parents, set things up and give them, rewards because of their activities being done on a regular basis. Agreed. I love your talk with Rich Roll. That is how I got to know about you and your book. Will it be available in German language? Well, Ingrid, I don't know. We'll try our best. I think we're in the process of speaking with some German publishers to see if they can translate it from English to German.
Now we are in North Korea. It's not North Korea. No, South Korea.
South Korea.
Spain, South Africa, Australia, India, Taiwan, Argentina, Israel.
Yeah.
Where else?
A
couple of other places. Did we say India? Yes.
We did say India.
So, if we're trying to get to Germany, actually, they are connecting with us, and hopefully that will happen, and we'll see.
Absolutely. But we'll let you know. We'll keep you updated, and send some emails and newsletters.
I love Mr. Ansari's statement. Park your car far away from your work. Absolutely. And forget. How about using the stairs? There's a reason they're there. Use the stairs. I've seen people one flight up, they use the elevator. Yeah. Use the stairs. That actually burns quite a bit of weight and also builds muscle, which is fantastic.
Absolutely.
These little micro behaviors do accumulate. And now with our phones, it actually counts the number of steps. Make that your goal setter as far as exercise. If nothing else, my goal this week is to average 5,000 steps a day.
Yeah.
Next week,
place to start.
5,500, and use that as a tool. Absolutely.
All right. Well, that was basically it. Thank you so much for joining us today. This was an important talk for us because more than just speaking about the benefits of the different lifestyle factors, it was about management, and it was not necessarily just a fluff, superficial talk, but how these incremental changes in our lives actually build connections and build habit pathways in the brain.
Yeah, if we don't talk about habits and how to help people achieve their habits, which actually is at the core of what we do, more than it's hard to say more because that's our PhDs, our whole life is about nutrition and lifestyle prevention. But believe it or not, we're more interested in behavior application. How do you make behaviors happen in children in a way where they love it and propels them forward in the most optimal way possible, and in our patients and our families and environments and communities. We're doing this. We're in charge of the brain health component in beach cities, which is the first time anywhere in the world where an entire region is actually instituting brain healthy living. And a major component of it is behavior change and implementing processes that really make those behaviors part of life, part of environment.
Absolutely. So thank you again for joining us, and hope to see you guys next week for another session. If you have any questions, please post them. We'll try our best to get to everybody as soon as possible. And again, if you have any ideas for conversations or topics that you're interested in that we should discuss, please let us know. And again, you can get our book from our website, teamshareseye.com/book, and from Barnes & Nobles and other bookstores in the country. And all the profits go to our Healthy Minds Initiative, which is a non-for-profit organization, and we use the funds to create brain health workshops and other educational material for communities, and use it for research as well.
Thank you again.
Have a great day. Thanks.